Good morning.
He was off duty at the time.
First of all,
Let's listen
I'd
in
like to
right now.
introduce the people to my left that I'm joined here by today. Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart, Cook County Sheriff Police Chief Leo Schmitz, Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, ATF Chicago Field Division Special Agent in Charge Chris Amon, and Deputy Mayor of Community Safety Gary Gatewood. I'd also like to introduce our Chief of Detectives, Antoinette City, along with the Area 1 Detective Division and the Investigative Response Team. We're here this morning to announce charges against the man that shot and killed an off-duty Cook County Sheriff's Deputy, Raphael Wardlaw. This was during an attempted robbery. 32-year-old Cordero Thompson, a convicted felon and registered gun offender, is charged with multiple felonies, including first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, attempted armed robbery with a firearm, murder with a strong probability of death or injury, murder with other forcible felony, aggravated battery with discharge of a firearm, and unlawful use of weapon by a felon. First off, I'd like to extend my support to the family of Deputy Wardlaw. The family has to be seriously grieving right now. From what I've heard and what I've learned about Deputy Wardlaw is that he was a dedicated family man, would help anyone that he could, and he was devoted to his job. I also want to offer my support to Sheriff Dart and to the entire Cook County Sheriff's Department. Losing one of your own is never easy. It's also worse when you know that you've lost someone to senseless gun violence. We've seen this all too often. Deputy Wardlaw should have been celebrating his 32nd birthday next week. Instead, his family is now dealing with the loss of a loved one. I cannot say enough to bring some type of sense to this type of violence to the family of this deputy. The family really has to be grieving through this type of event, and please just keep that family in your prayers. This is very frustrating. It's frustrating to see this type of violence across the city in general. Obviously, this was an individual who dedicated his life to public service, and we lost this individual. And there are people across this city as a whole who are dealing with the same types of losses. It's senseless, and it has got to stop. We honor Deputy Wardlaw by bringing his killer to justice. We want to make sure that this individual cannot destroy another life or lives, because even if it's one life that's taken, it affects the lives of everyone who knows that individual. It has a ripple effect. Hopefully we can bring the family some level of justice with what we've done here today. I want to thank the Area 1 detectives and the Investigative Response Team for this swift response. What I can tell you about the Area 1 Detective Division, just like our detectives as a whole, led by Chief Antoinette City, is that they work their fingers to the bone, not only in a case like this, but in every single case that they can, to try to bring some type of justice to families who have suffered a loss. I cannot say enough about the work that was done by the Chicago Police Department and our Detective Division. But again, we did not do this alone. I have to thank Special Agent in Charge, Chris Amon, and his team at the ATF Chicago Field Division and the team at the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, who played a crucial role in making sure that this offender was held accountable. Working in partnership with our federal partners was very helpful in helping us get here. I'd also like to thank Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx for a partnership in securing charges with this offender. I've stood here on several occasions with the Cook County State's Attorney Foxx, who has worked well with us in cases like this in trying to bring justice to these families. We have to do something about this violence, and I'd like to thank State's Attorney Kim Foxx for the partnership here. It is important for everyone to understand that moving forward, we will continue to work in the manner that we're working right now to try to keep this city safe and to try to bring justice to families who have suffered losses and have lost family members to all types of violence, not just gun violence. We've got to bring the violence down in the city, and we've got to start talking about ways to get that done. Cooperation with our partners, cooperation with our community members is going to help us get there. With that, I'd like to bring up Chief of Detectives Antoinette City to provide an investigative overview.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. First and foremost, I want to offer our condolences to the family of Deputy Wardlaw and the Cook County Sheriff's Department. The partnership you see here is the reason we were able to bring charges in this case. Our Area 1 detectives, investigative response team, our members of the ATF Chicago Field Division worked closely throughout this investigation to bring justice to Deputy Wardlaw and his family. In the early morning hours of July 30th, Deputy Wardlaw was approached by the offender, a 32-year-old Cordero Thompson, who announced a robbery while Wardlaw was seated in his vehicle at a gas station. An exchange of gunfire ensued between Deputy Wardlaw and the offender, who fired at Deputy Wardlaw with 2 weapons simultaneously. Approximately 69 rounds were fired in total by the offender. Deputy Wardlaw fired 1 shot, striking the offender in the leg. Deputy Wardlaw was struck in the chest and subsequently fled the scene and was involved in a traffic crash. A second victim was grazed in the foot. The offender arrived at a nearby hospital for treatment for the gunshot wound he sustained and provided false information about his identity to officers who arrived at the hospital. He then left the hospital and took a ride share to another hospital where he continued to provide false information about his identity. Detectives learned about the offender's movement between hospitals and injuries consistent with video that showed the offender with a leg injury at the scene, which helped them identify him as the individual who shot Deputy Wardlaw. He was placed into custody less than 3 hours after the shooting. The investigative response team immediately conducted a gunshot residue test on the offender, which later came back positive. A DNA sample was obtained from the offender and analyzed with blood evidence that was recovered from the scene. The analysis showed the DNA was a match. Again, the partnership between everyone up here today was instrumental in securing charges. From the Area 1 detectives to the investigative response team to the ATF and the state's attorney, everyone had a crucial role to play in ensuring this offender was held accountable for his actions. I'd now like to turn it over to ATF Chicago Field Division Special Agent in Charge, Chris Ammon.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning, everyone. First, on behalf of ATF, we'd like to offer our condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Deputy Wardlaw. Unfortunately, we stand here again today announcing murder charges against a violent felon who is prohibited from possessing a firearm. This is the 3rd time in the 16 months that I've been in my position here in Chicago that we're announcing murder charges against someone who murdered one of our law enforcement officers during a robbery. In this case, like the others, the defendant allegedly possessed not only a firearm illegally, but a high-powered firearm, a conversion device, a firearm affixed with a conversion device, powerful enough to discharge over 30 rounds in 2 seconds. One of our key strategies of our newly formed Crime Gun Intelligence Center in our partnership with CPD and 12 other agencies is to utilize laboratory resources to quickly identify violent offenders involved in crimes. That's what we did in this case and in so many others across the city. Our law enforcement partnerships will continue to address the most violent gun offenders so that we can prevent future tragedies. Thank you, and at this time, I'll turn it over to State's Attorney Kim Fox.
Thank you, Special Agent Amon. Thank you, Superintendent Snelling, Chief or City, and to this collaboration of partnership that you see standing before you today. Today, we stand united in our grief and in our resolve to seek justice for Deputy Wardlaw. He was a protector, both on and off duty. Deputy Wardlaw was an Inglewood kid who studied at Indiana State University to prepare himself to live out his dream to work in law enforcement. He sailed through the academy and took a job as a Cook County Sheriff's deputy working at the Cook County Jail. Countless friends, family, and co-workers gathered to release balloons in the deputy's honor, just as his work shift would have ended. There, they described him as a hard worker and that his personal mission was to make people feel safe, including in the last moments of his life in his efforts to protect his friend. He is gone far too soon. As you've already heard, our office has approved first-degree murder charges as well as attempt first-degree murder charges against Cordero Thompson in the death of Deputy Wardlaw. Our office worked tirelessly over the last 48 hours alongside the Chicago Police Department, the ATF, the Cook County Sheriff's Office, to bring this suspect responsible for this death to justice. We are incredibly grateful for your partnership. As Superintendent Snelling mentioned earlier, what you are seeing displayed in these moments of tragedy is what happens when partnership and collaboration come together at both the state, local, and federal level, coming together, bringing the full force of our resources to bring those to justice. I want to extend a special thanks to our felony review unit led by Kim Ward for their diligent efforts in this case. The charges announced today reflect our commitment to pursuing justice for Deputy Wardlaw and especially for his family. Mr. Thompson will appear in first appearance court later this afternoon at the Layton Criminal Courthouse at 26 in California. There will be a full recitation of the proffer at that time. The tragedy and loss comes as we have all lost a jewel, a good friend, a wonderful gentleman, and sadly, once again, a man of the law. To the persistent and violent and overwhelming pandemic of gun violence here in Chicago and Cook County. We must do more to prevent situations such as this, though we are prepared to respond when these incidents occur. We must be equally as diligent to ensure that they don't happen in the first place. I lastly want to once again offer my sincere condolences to the family of Deputy Wardlaw, again to his colleagues at the Cook County Sheriff's Office, and all of those who loved and cherished him. Thank you. With that, I'll bring Sheriff Tom Dart to the podium.
I just really want to, first and foremost, thank everybody. The work that the Chicago Police Department did was nothing short of phenomenal. Just fantastic, incredible work, amazing. And the ATF, absolutely incredible too. And the state's attorney's office, my God, everybody worked so well. I can never thank you enough for this. It means so much to our office. Kim nailed it when she was talking about what he meant to people in our office. I did not know him personally, but I know many people who know him very well. And he was absolutely amazing. He was everything Kim talked about, the colleagues talked about. He was someone that always was there for everybody else. I spent some time with his mom right afterwards, and This poor woman, absolutely incredible woman. She kept talking about how Raphael's entire vision in life was to follow in his father's footsteps. His father worked as a police officer at Chicago Police Department in the Inglewood area, too. And he wanted to follow in his footsteps. And he told his mom that he wanted to be a hero like his dad. Unfortunately, he became a hero. And he became a hero because of our guns, the guns that are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It is something that we as a society, not Chicago, this country, must come to terms with. How in God's name can we have someone firing off 69 rounds at somebody in a sane society? Come on. This has to stop. I just cannot emphasize enough to you when I was talking to his mom, the things that he gave up for this community. His mom said over and over again, she was his only son. And she was adamant that she wanted him to give her a grandbaby. And he was just as adamant saying, no, I want to help everyone else. I want to help everyone else. So here was someone that was a true public servant, gave up everything. And in the end, was there trying to save people. Folks, we have to do much, much better here. I cannot once again thank you, Larry, that the work your folks did, Kim, your folks, ATF, absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
With that, we'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you, sir.
We'll start questioning back here, and please introduce yourself.
Johnny Love from Fox 32. This suspect was a convicted felon, and early on there was some talk that he may have been involved in a string of other crimes, driving a stolen vehicle. What can you tell us about the record of this person and what they were doing that night?
I can tell you about his record, Joni. I won't be able to give you any perspective of what he was doing that night. This is someone who has 2 prior gun offenses for which he was convicted. The first was a 2015 unlawful use of a weapon where he was sentenced to 4 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. That sentence commencing on being delivered on January 27, 2016. He later picked up a Class 2 unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. In a 2020 case, he was sentenced to 8 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. He was released on mandatory supervised release on January 15, 2023. He was released from mandatory supervised release earlier this year on January 19, 24. To the question of why he was released in 2023 on an 8-year sentence, you get good credit for 50% off, plus the time that he was in custody prior to trial. So his pretrial custody date versus in addition to his sentencing date is why he was released in 2023. His mandatory supervised release ended earlier this year.
Is for anybody who wants to take it. I know several of you had mentioned, Maxwell Evans with Block Club Chicago. I know several of you had mentioned that more needs to be done to prevent crimes like this in the future. Could anybody speak to what specific policies or what changes do need to be made for that to happen? Listen, we can talk about policies. Obviously, we need tougher laws. We need tougher gun laws. We need more accountability when it comes to people who are committing acts of violence. But at the same time, policies are not enough. We need people to get engaged. We need people to be involved. When we look at our communities, especially those communities that are the most harmed, we actually need people to step up. We need people to come to the table and work with us because we're willing to work with those people. You know, all too often we see this type of violence on a daily basis in the city. And, you know, when we bring someone to justice, it gives us a feeling of comfort for that moment until the next one happens. And then we start all over again. At some point, we've got to get everybody involved. Everybody has to step up and be a part of the solution. It can't just be policies. We can't solve these problems with policies, because even when you put laws in place, those laws are there to hold people accountable, but people still break those laws. So the enforcement is a part of it. Prevention, as the state's attorney mentioned, is a major part of it. But in order for that to happen, we need cooperative bodies. We need people who want to come in and be a part of the solution.
weapons, did they have that conversion device on them?
The offender's weapons were not recovered. Based on the evidence that we recovered at the scene, again, we had multiple calibers of fired cartridge casings. We had 40 caliber, 45 caliber, 9mm. We believe those to be firearms that could fire those caliber ballistics. In terms of what we were also able to gather through video and the number of casings that were recovered, as we mentioned, we have approximately 69 casings that were recovered. It does appear very preliminarily that one of those weapons at a minimum had a conversion device, but those weapons have not yet been recovered to confirm that, but based on the evidence we've gathered, that's what we believe.
So you said, sorry, 69 shell casings, and it's believed that the deputy just fired a single shot, I think you mentioned, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Good morning, Michelle Gabler with ABC7. I have two questions, if that's okay. The first one, can you walk us through a little bit more of the detail of the offender basically making his way to the hospital and lying about? Can you tell, what hospital did he go to first? Why did he leave there and go somewhere else? Where was that somewhere else? Just if we can add a little more detail to that.
Sure. One of the things we're going to be putting out later from our Office of News Affairs is a image of a vehicle that we believe our offender had been in prior to the shooting. We have reason to believe that that vehicle was in the area of that gas station circling around, and that our offender exited that vehicle, at which time he approached and announced the robbery, and the events unfolded as we described. After the incident, we see our offender go back towards that vehicle and leave the scene. We then were given information that we had an individual with a gunshot injury at Insight Hospital. I believe that's on 2525 South Michigan Interstate. At that time, officers were dispatched to conduct an investigation into that incident. As we mentioned, the offender gave false information about his identity. Once officers arrived to conduct an interview, he did not want to speak with the officers, and he then left that hospital and made his way through a rideshare to Northwestern Hospital, where again, we were notified that an individual with a gunshot injury was there seeking treatment, and based on the injuries being consistent with what we can see to be the injury that the individual sustained on the scene, as well as giving a very similar alias, which we will not be disclosing here, but a similar alias, a lot of this led our detectives to make that connection and to bring him into custody less than 3 hours after the shooting.
Next question, please.
Yes, at the hospital.
Am I able to ask the second question?
Try and get one in for everyone first. Yes, the one.
Can you just clarify, I know somebody mentioned that the deputy's father was also in law enforcement, should I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
In Inglewood?
Yeah. Yes.
Could you say how long he was on the force?
I really can't give all the details. His mom was walking me through it, and that she referred to the fact he was at Inglewood, and he either in the house or in the neighborhood was referred to as officer friendly, and that's what Raphael aspired to be. Thanks.
Mike Krauser, WBDM Radio. Did Deputy Wardlaw make it out of his car, or did he just take off as soon as he was hit?
If you wanna-
Once the robbery was announced, he, as we mentioned, was seated in his vehicle. He did attempt to fire a round from his vehicle. At that point, as I had mentioned, this offender was armed with 2 firearms and simultaneously unloaded a barrage of bullets on the deputy. As he was struck, he attempted to leave, and then we have additional gunshots that were fired at our deputy as he was trying to leave the scene where he was under attack. So he was able to get off 1 shot, which did injure our offender, and is ultimately why we were able to locate him and take him into custody. And that incident did take place from the deputy's vehicle.
Final question here.
Hi, I'm Jessica D'Onofrio with ABC7 Chicago, and this is an off-topic question for you, Superintendent Snelling. The station is asking a little bit about this video circulating online which shows a Chicago police officer possibly beating a man and having a gun to his head, and there's video of that. Is there anything you can add or say about?
Yes, we're aware of the video. We're aware of the video. It's not a complete video. It doesn't show everything. What I can tell you right now is that that ended in an arrest, gun recovery at the time. But what I will tell you is, the Chicago Police Department, myself, we take these things seriously. There's an internal investigation that has been launched. The night that this occurred, there was a complaint register number pulled by one of our members, just to make sure that this is investigated properly. And as the investigation unfolds, we'll be getting out more information on that. Okay?